shelf.
So the beauty of the MCU is that it's always expanding with each new story. And it started off very grounded with Iron Man, and now we're in a world where there's magic and witchcraft and pocket dimensions. And I'd love to hear both of your perspectives on this as storytellers. What's it like working in a world where the dynamics are always shifting, where there's new characters and universes that maybe weren't available to you before? What's changed over the course of you telling your stories?
Hmm. I love your question. As you're asking it, though, I feel like you've described my experience living in and around in this body, in this country. I feel very much like the rules of it are constantly changing. And so as we made a grounded show for this time, I think it speaks to the supernatural, it speaks to the magical and the technical. But I think every Black girl in every city has some amount of magic, has some amount of tech, has some amount of blip to her life. And I think my joy was living in the grounded space between what I experience every day, between the liquor store, church, beauty supply store, and the idea of Madripoor. I feel like that's where our show lives.
And with Riri and Natalie, the series literally opens with them sharing their hopes and dreams. And the thing that stands out is their dream is just to be happy. And that doesn't sound very ambitious, but this show is about moving beyond your trauma. And sometimes people have to move mountains to feel safe and present. What was it about the character of Ironheart that made it the great vehicle to get those concepts across?
That's a great question.
Very astute.
I I experienced a similar trauma and a similar loss to Riri. I don't talk about it very often. But when I was 19, one of my best friends was killed by gunshot. And so I think a lot of the show, both for myself and for the character, is about unpacking that trauma and finding a safe place to live in and around it. I think Riri's ambition to be happy it feels so far away on so many days for her. I think it's an inconvenience for her to have so much genius, but not to be able to have the resource or to live in and around MIT, which is a great institution by all counts, but she's been there since she's 15 and she's sort of exhausted what it can do for her. So I think happiness it can feel small, small in its language, but yeah, I think it's like your language is apt. It really takes mountains being moved in order to understand that the happiness is there. And that's really our series is about watching Riri move that mountain. And it takes her talking to Xavier, talking to Natalie, talking to Landon, being in community with her mom, physically doing something tactile and building, which I think, sort of gets left out of the equation. But you know, Riri's an athlete. She carries around 1,000-pound suit. She's an intellect, and she can think faster than everyone else and recreate the griot algorithm in her sleep, literally. So I think happiness feels like the one thing she can't manufacture, and the one thing she can't control, and that rings very, very true in my life as well.
Culturally, it seems like we progress, we get two steps forward and we move one step back. And in a time right now, we have what feels like militant opposition to stories that focus on underrepresented voices. There's just so much pushback against them. What does it mean to be telling this story about a young Black female genius in a time when we're getting this militant opposition to stories for people who haven't always been spotlighted in mainstream culture?
It's funny because I think as a writer, just in general, our job is to spotlight the underrepresented. Like we don't want to see the same characters over and over. You want to know about the one and not the 100. So like I think it's funny that we're constantly, all of us as creators are asked to like do as if we're doing something differently than what everyone else is doing. I think it's that our difference deserves to be celebrated. And we've been told so often that our difference is dirty or dark or unwanted. But Sherlock Holmes is underrepresented as well. Like those characters are just as weird and quirky and unseen. And I think we deserve to see ourselves on screen.
And I think what in those circumstances, you gotta keep in mind, like what I like to keep in mind is like that who is this for? You know what I mean? The person who's meeting it with vehement resistance, show is never for them. You know what I mean? And in this day and age of social media, narratives can form, whether they're truthful or not, contrary to popular belief, most people who watch something and enjoy it, they don't hop on the internet and tell people how they feel about it. You know what I mean? I'm saying that's a very specific minority. You know what I'm saying? It's vocal. You know what I mean? But your general film going audience, your general television audience, they watch something, and if they really like it, they maybe tell their friend. You know what I mean? Over text message or in person. You know what I'm saying? And so often, you know, we can forget that. Me as a creative, as a producer, I actually get data on what's being streamed and how much stuff is being watched. And it does not always reflect the narratives that exist online, of how much something is hated or unwanted. You know what I mean? A lot of times, a lot of things that I've made personally, you know what I mean, and the things that you hear are the most maybe unwanted or most disliked. They tend to be the things that are being watched the most. You know what I'm saying? Like case in point, my film Wakanda Forever. You know what I mean? Is the most consistently most streamed, most watched thing that I've ever done. But because that movie is about a lot of Black women, you know what I'm saying? If you check the narrative online, you would think it was the opposite. You know what I'm saying? But somewhere somebody's watching that movie and they're not jumping on the internet about it. You know what I mean? They watching it with their family, they enjoying it. You know what I mean? They going back and they watching it again. So it's our job to just understand like what's real and what isn't. You know what I'm saying? And to not let somebody, you know what I'm saying, talking shit discourage us from what our actual job is. You know what I'm saying? Like the bus driver is not doing that. The politician is not doing that. The community organizer is not doing that. The mom is not doing that. They're not letting somebody talking shit stop them from their purpose. You know what I'm saying? And us as artists, we can't let that happen either.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and just thank you for telling such beautiful stories full of love and camaraderie and Black genius. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So much, Victor. Have a good afternoon.